Hello, hello, and welcome to PD in your PJs. I'm so excited to be here with you for Seesaw for reading fluency. You should hear me talking now. I do want to assure you that we're recording this session and you will receive it in an email shortly after we conclude. More importantly, though, you're going to get the slides and you'll want to look through those at your own convenience and click on all the resources and take a closer look later. Remember, if you're watching this presentation as a recording or live, you're not going to be able to click on anything during the video, but you can get the slides later from the email and then you'll be able to click through things at your convenience. Quick introduction, my name's Julie. I was a high school ELA teacher for 18 years, and now I'm on the teacher community team at Seesaw. If you can, go ahead and find me on Twitter. I'm at EdTechJulieJ. Give me a follow because I tweet out a lot of ideas and resources relating to Seesaw. And of course, you can connect with our whole team on Twitter at Seesaw. Now, this webinar tonight is about fluency, and it's not about getting started with Seesaw or setting up a Seesaw class. So if you are brand new to Seesaw and you need that information, go ahead and find that online at ideas.seesaw.me. And of course, we want to make sure you can join us for some upcoming webinars if they're on topics that interest you. And you can always look at the calendar at web.seesaw.me/PDs. I do want to also ask you, when we conclude tonight, you're going to get a little survey that pops up on your screen. Take a minute to answer those questions. We do value your feedback. That's how we make our sessions better. And then we also draw a t-shirt winner from those responses every week. So just take a minute and do that for me when we conclude tonight. I'm so excited to be here with Lorraine, though. She has lots of wonderful things to share with you. How are you doing tonight, Lorraine?
I'm doing well. So excited to be with you all.
Okay, I'm going to click it over to you and we'll see your screen here in just a second, and then you can take it away.
Wonderful. Hopefully you should be seeing my screen at this point.
Yep, looking good. You got it.
Awesome. Sounds good. I am so excited to be here with you tonight to chat about using Seesaw for reading fluency. This is one of the very first things I did when I started using Seesaw in my classroom 3 years ago. So I'm really excited to share it with you all tonight. To give you a little bit more info about myself, my name's Lorraine Magee. I'm a third grade teacher in my hometown of Natick, Massachusetts. I actually teach third grade in the same classroom where I was a third grade student, and I can tell you a lot has changed since then. We do use shared devices in our classroom. We have access to both iPads and Chromebooks, so we've used Seesaw for reading fluency on both of those devices. You can follow me at Meet Miss Magee on Twitter, where I'm always sharing different ideas for Seesaw in your classroom. So I thought I'd start with the why of using Seesaw for fluency practice. I think our time as educators is so valuable in the classroom, and anytime we're adding an additional tool, I really want to make sure it's something that's valuable for my students. Julie also threw the link to the slides on here if you're looking to access them later on, so you can use that link at any time. So there are a lot of reasons why I use Seesaw for fluency practice. First of all, my students absolutely love it. They love being able to read on the iPad or the Chromebook to show what they're reading and to read poems out loud and engage in a different way. I think it also allows teachers to be with more than one student at a time. Within any one literacy block, I can have every single one of my students record a fluency passage. And I definitely wouldn't be able to sit with all of those students one-on-one within that same block. So I think it's a time saver for me as an educator and allows me to be there with every student during their independent reading. I think it also promotes student reflection. Often when we ask students to read for fluency, we're right next to them to give feedback. When we record on Seesaw, we're still able to give them feedback, but they can also listen back to their own reading and see where they have room for improvement and where they have strengths. I also love using Seesaw for this purpose because it creates an artifact for you to bring with you to a parent-teacher conference, to a child study meeting, to any type of setting where you want to show what your students are capable of and what they've achieved in your classroom. It also helps parents celebrate the progress if you have parents linked into your Seesaw accounts as well. I also use Fluency for Seesaw I use Seesaw for fluency practice because a recent article in the Reading Teacher suggested that rereading can be more purposeful when students have an audience in mind. So when we ask students to read the same poems or passages over and over again, it can feel like a task that isn't very engaging for them. But if we ask them to read for their parents or to read for us or to read to create a recording for a younger student in our school setting, it can be so powerful for students to imagine that audience, and it can help their reading come to life. So now the big question is how to use Seesaw for fluency practice. I wanted to show you a few examples and give you some suggestions for ways that you could use this in your classroom. Again, if you're new to Seesaw, it's very easy to use it for fluency practice. So I wanted to show you one example. This is a student who took a picture of a poem that she was reading by Shel Silverstein, and she just used the add photo option in Seesaw to snap a quick pic of it on her desk, and then she used the record feature.
If you have to dry the dishes.
And I'm not sure if you just heard a little bit of her voice there, but she did record the entire Shel Silverstein poem, which she loved. Her mom ended up commenting on it and really celebrating her reading progress with her. And this was a student who had a hard time with reading earlier in the year, but she just loved adding it onto Seesaw. She thought it was so engaging. So in this case, this student chose to add this particular poem. I didn't ask her to add it. She just wanted to celebrate her reading, which is so fantastic when we can add that wow work to Seesaw. Here's another example. This is an image of a poem that I uploaded to Seesaw using the activities feature, which I'll show you in a moment. And I asked the students to record it. So I sent this poem to them in September, and each student was able to log on and add their own recording there. So I wanted to take you through a few guidelines. There are so many options for using Seesaw for reading fluency practice. First, you can have students select a passage from whatever book they're reading. Some benefits of this is that it allows you to check in to see what students are reading. So if you ask them once a week to take a picture of a page in their independent reading book and read it aloud to you, you not only see how they're doing with their oral reading, but you also have a record of which books they've been choosing to read independently. Another benefit for this is that it may serve as a familiar text for students. Your students may preview that page. They may have those names in mind from the book that they've been reading, if they know the characters and things like that. So it's more familiar for them. It might be more comfortable for them to add on to Seesaw. Another option is that you can give them a poem or a passage to read. This allows you to see both a cold read for students and then maybe a hot read, meaning that you give it to them once when they've never seen the poem before, and you see what they can do when they're decoding for the first time. And then you may also ask them to re-record later that day or later that week to give you that hot read. And this can help broaden students' horizons in terms of what they read and the types of poems that they're looking at, different things like that. So I love sending my students new poems on Seesaw. They always like to see what I've selected for them to read that week. One suggestion from another PD in your PJs that I've linked to on the slides recommended having weekly check-ins for your students, having a day when that student knows it will be their job to take a picture of what they're reading and upload it to Seesaw. Having a weekly schedule like this ensures that all students get a chance to record at least once a week, and students can read a passage from their independent reading books or a passage you give to them. I thought this was such a great way to put ownership on the students to know that it was their day to record on Seesaw. Another way that you can send out fluency passages to your students is using Seesaw activities. Now, once you get the slides, you'll see that down here in the notes section, I've actually put an activity text that you can copy and paste. But if you go into Seesaw and you add an activity, you can hit create new. I always just title it the name of the poem. Then I ask my students, I'm just going to go copy and paste from down here. I ask my students to add the item and record over it using the tools that Seesaw gives them. Now what I do is down here, I add whatever poem I'd like them to use as a template. So I may have a poem for them that I'd like them to record. So I can plug it in here as a student template, and that allows them to just make a copy of it and use the record tool on top of it when they add it to Seesaw. So once I do this and add the poem down here, if I were to name it and hit preview, you would see that it now tells students exactly which buttons they need to press in order to record the poem and send it to me. So using Seesaw activities is a really easy way for you to send a poem out to your students. Another thing we do in our classroom is we use Seesaw for fluency self-assessment. So we have used this fluency checklist, which is from the Spring Grove Area School District and is available online. And again, it's linked in the slides. This can really help guide student reflection. So I encourage students to comment on their own posts, listening back for one strength and one goal after a cold read. So you can see this student did this. I gave him this passage to read. And this was before activities, so I just had a piece of paper and let this kid take a picture of it. And what I loved here was he said, I think I did a good job with my accuracy because I read all the words correctly. And he then made a voice comment in which he says that one goal for next time is for him to pay attention to the punctuation. He said, I didn't stop at a lot of the periods that I should have. I loved how he included that reflection there. And then he said, I'm proud of this because I'm not very good at reading out loud and I did good on this one. And that sort of let me know that this was a kid who was really proud of this reading and also someone with whom I could work to build that confidence in the future as well. Another suggestion is to use poems that you can find online if you're looking for them. There's a great website called the Poem Farm where you can find plenty of different poems to use. I also take screenshots of the ones from Scholastic Storyworks or any other poems you might access online. I've also had success asking the kids to bring in poems that they'd like the other kids to record on Seesaw. They always love bringing in poems to share with their classmates. I also wanted to share another idea from another Seesaw teacher who said that she has her students read the same story twice. She has day one, which is a cold read. They upload it as is. They read it the first time and make a goal for how they'd like to improve. And then they practice it throughout the week and upload a new reading at the end of the week. And the second time, they can re-record it as many times as they would like. I thought that was a great idea for using it in your classroom. So if you're looking for these slides, you can absolutely access them at the link that you can see here, and I'm sure they'll be emailed to you as well. Please feel free to reach out on Twitter if you're looking for help in rolling this out in your classroom, and I'll definitely be sharing out more ideas on Twitter in the days to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so wonderful. You did an amazing job, and your modeling the steps of adding an activity is so helpful, and I'm sure our viewers are really grateful for that. I do have a question that Paige is asking that you could maybe weigh in on. Tell us more about your portfolio day.
Oh, yeah. So we have a portfolio day at the end of the year that's been sort of going on as long as I can remember since I was a student there, where we have the parents come into our classrooms to see what students have been working on that year. And one thing that my students did last year was they printed out all the poems that they had read over the course of the year from Seesaw. And if you've used Seesaw to print before, it adds an item QR code where parents can scan and then go listen to their child reading that poem. So it was really great because parents were able to take home a collection of all the poems their child had read in third grade, which is just such a great keepsake to have as students grow older and parents want to hold on to some of those memories.
Okay, that's great. I have a few more questions coming in if you have another minute or so. Deb is asking, have you ever recorded stories or poems or books that are several pages long? And I can weigh in on that one too, but what do you think about that, Lorraine?
We tend to just read ones that are about 1 page long because we found it's easiest when adding them into Seesaw. I have had students record multiple pages and just submit them as separate items. But when I'm sending out things to students, I tend to keep it pretty short just because I use it as a check-in in my classroom. And if I would like a student to read something longer, I'd usually sit with them and watch them read if I'm looking for something different.
Okay, well said. And actually, that same question was coming in from a couple other people at the same time. So that is good that people are thinking about that. I actually have had students record with the multiple photos option. You can't really record over multiple photos. You make one recording and then the person can just swipe through the photos. So that's a good workaround. And then another thing that teachers sometimes do is do that in Shadow Puppet and then upload that to Seesaw because you can record on each individual image in Shadow Puppet. But those are good questions. I'm just going to scroll and see if we have any other questions before we conclude tonight, if that's okay, Lorraine.
Absolutely.
I'm scrolling through. I think we've covered a lot of these. Okay, so Teresa's asking about the poem template. Okay, so Teresa, the term template is coming from the activities feature in Seesaw. In Seesaw, you can add something to your activity that would then get posted to that student's activity. So that's probably how she's using the term template in this presentation. It's like the image of the poem is part of the activities template. If you go to Seesaw and help.seesaw.me, you can look for more resources related to activities, and there are some good tutorial videos there.
And
I'm
just
getting
to add on to that, Julie, if that's okay.
yeah.
Many of the teachers at my school who have tried this, the biggest, I think, learning curve in adding an activity on Seesaw is that they uploaded the poem as an example instead of as a template. And if you upload it as an example, students can like see it. But if you upload it as a template, it'll then copy it for them to record their voice over, which has been really helpful for us when adding it onto Seesaw.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I would have forgotten to mention it, but you are so right, and that is so helpful. You would want to add the image of the poem, not as the example, but as the template. Well said. Lorraine, this was so helpful. I'm so excited for people to get your slides later, and of course, anybody who's watching this later as a recording can see the link to the slides there on the screen. Definitely connect with us for some future webinars. Don't forget to find that calendar at web.seesaw.me/PDs. And of course, take a minute to answer those survey questions when they pop up on your screen. Lorraine, thank you so much. I can't wait to connect with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.